Welcome to the 95th Annual General Meeting of the Radio Society of Great Britain. I'm Steve Thomas, M1ACB, the RSGB General Manager and Company Secretary. We start with a few administrative points. The format of this online annual general meeting was agreed by the board of the Radio Society of Great Britain in March 2022. The calling notice, previous minutes and election details were published in the April 2022 edition of RADCOM and on the Society's website at rsgb.org/AGM, together with the annual report and financial statements. Paid up members of the Society have been able to vote online or by post. The voting has been conducted by Civica Election Services on behalf of the Society, and the ballot closed at 0900 on the 21st of April 2022. Members have also been able to submit questions to the Board of Directors in advance of the meeting. Submissions for those questions closed at 0900 on the 20th of April 2022. These proceedings are being recorded and will be available via the Society's website in due course. As you know from our Articles of Association, any resolutions to be considered by the meeting must be submitted 21 days in advance. We have received no resolutions and the meeting will be as set out in the calling notice. During the formal AGM, previously submitted questions will be addressed if they relate to the particular agenda items, or separately during a subsequent session if they relate to more general work of the Society or amateur radio matters. We are presenting this live, but if technology fails and the live stream stops, the AGM will continue and the results will be announced via our other communication channels. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Society's Board Chair, Ian Shepherd, G4 EVK.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Society's annual general meeting. Before we start the formal business, let me confirm that this meeting is the annual general meeting dealing with the business as described in the calling notice. After the meeting, I shall ask the President, Dr. Stuart Bryant, G3YSX, to present a review of 2021, which will be followed by the presentation of awards. We shall then take a very short lunch break and show the RSGB convention presentation of some amateur radio activities by John Hislop, G7OHO, and the Steamettes. This will be followed by a Q&A session for board directors to answer previously submitted questions. After the formal meeting concludes, there will be a presentation by Brian Coleman, G4NNS, describing the Meteor Beacon project, which recently received RSGB legacy funding. Before we start the formal presentation, I'd like to make a few personal comments. This is my last duty as chair of the board, and I leave the board having completed my 2 terms of 3 years as allowed within our Articles of Association. It has been a privilege to contribute to the success of the Society over this period, especially during years when the effects of the SARS-CoV-2 COVID pandemic resulted in many challenges and threats to our personal and corporate activities. I'm pleased that the Society came through the significant crises of the pandemic with resilience and goodwill, affording both our members and amateur radio in general support and new opportunities whilst the enforced restrictions are in place. I take this opportunity to pay tribute to the staff, volunteers and members who all work together to achieve significant progress, and to my fellow directors for their flexibility and huge personal efforts to manage our way through this storm. We now turn to the formal meeting, the 95th Annual General Meeting. The President, Dr. Stuart Bryant, G3YSX, the General Manager and Company Secretary, Steve Thomas, M1ACB, and Honorary Treasurer, Chris Wood, GD6 TWF, will be contributing to the meeting. You will note the other people present on the meeting. Also joining on the online meeting are members of the board, senior members of staff, and the elections officer, Stephen Purser, GW4 SHF. We have received apologies for absence for the following member, Dave Wilson, M0OBW, who is occupied on other amateur radio activities today. I now move to the published agenda. Agenda item 1, which is resolution 1, is to approve, and if approved, confirm the minutes of the 94th Annual General Meeting held on the 24th of April 2021 and circulated to members in the April 2022 RADCOM. It is not a requirement that these minutes be presented at an annual general meeting, nor is it required that we record any details of discussion on them, other than to record decisions made. Members were given the opportunity to submit questions in advance of the AGM to be answered by the directors during the meeting. We have received no question in relation to the arrangements for the AGM. There is a board motion to confirm the minutes. May I have a proposer?
I propose that we confirm the minutes. This is Stuart, G3YSX.
Thank you.
Len Paget, GM0NX. I second that motion.
Thank you, Len. The results of the voting show that the motion is carried by 114 votes to 1 against. Agenda item 2 is to receive and consider the accounts for the period 1st of January 2021 to the 31st of December 2021, and the reports of the board and the auditor, which were made available online from the 23rd of March 2022. I first call on the Treasurer to present the auditor's report. Chris.
The auditor's report, together with the statutory financial statements and other annual general meeting material, were published online. Members are given the opportunity to submit questions in advance of the AGM to be answered during the meeting. We have not received any questions regarding this subject. Thank you, Chairman.
You will have noted that there is an unqualified audit, which is what we would expect. Now to the accounts. I will start by mentioning that there is no requirement to lodge the accounts, and the purpose of this item on the agenda is to give members the opportunity to submit any questions in advance of the AGM to be answered at this time. I will ask Chris to give a brief summary of the accounting period for 2021.
Thank you, Board Chair. The Society maintains a strong financial position, and it reported slightly lower revenues of £1,437,000 compared to £1,441,000 in 2020. In 2020, the Society saw a growth in membership driven by people finding new hobbies in lockdowns. These new members have largely been retained in 2021. Government restrictions across the United Kingdom and elsewhere have meant very low travel costs, as internal meetings have been held virtually and shows have been cancelled. In addition, stock markets have recovered, meaning unrealised surplus on investments has increased. The Society holds a portfolio of medium risk investment, which is used to improve returns compared to bank deposits on assets to support operations. In late 2021, after taking independent financial advice, the board decided to invest a further £250,000. This additional investment is being phased on a monthly basis and will be complete by June 2022. During the year, the Society invested £156,000 in computer equipment. This included £138,000 of investment in a new customer relationship management system. The customer relationship management system is the membership database and back office systems of the Society. It replaced a system that had reached the end of its life, and over time, the new system will allow the Society to improve services to members. The Society did not apply for nor receive any government assistance in relation to the pandemic and continued to pay its suppliers on normal terms. No borrowings were incurred. The net assets of the Society at the 31st of December 2021 were £1,526,000 compared to £1,425,000 at 31st of December 2020. We have not received any questions regarding this subject. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. We are required simply to receive the accounts at this meeting, and there is no requirement to vote. I will now move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is item 3, which is Resolution 2, to appoint Peters, Elworthy and Moore as auditors and to authorise the board to fix their remuneration. The board is of the view that, at least for the time being, reappointment of our current auditors is in the best interests of the society, both for reasons of cost and continuity. The board has therefore determined to recommend the reappointment of the existing auditors. We have not received any questions regarding this subject. May I have a proposal, please?
Mr. Chairman, I propose the motion.
Thank you, Richard. May I have a seconder?
Mr. Chairman, Jonathan Groves, M0VRI. I'm happy to second that proposition.
Thank you, Jonathan. The results of the voting show that the motion is carried by 118 votes to 1 against. We now move to agenda item 4, which is resolution 3. This is to endorse Jonathan Groves, M0VRI, and Richard Horton, G4AOJ, as nominated directors of the RSGB to serve until the 2025 AGM. The articles require that nominated directors are endorsed by the membership in a secret ballot on or before the AGM. This is Article 33C. Jonathan Groves, M0VRI, and Richard Horton, G4AOJ, were recommended to the board as nominated directors by the Nominations Committee in January 2022. The board accepted the recommendations at its meeting of the 15th of January 2022, and Jonathan Groves, M0VRI, and Richard Horton, G4AOJ, are offered for endorsement in accordance with the articles. In accordance with the Society's bylaws, voting has been conducted electronically by Civica Election Services. Could the Elections Officer, Stephen Purser, GW4SHF, please announce the results of the ballot? Stephen.
Candidates are selected because they bring skills which would otherwise not be found on the board. I am the independent chair of the Nominations Committee, and I maintain the list of potential board candidates. I would welcome a discussion with any member with business skills which they would be willing to use to assist the Society as a board director. I can be contacted at nominations.chair@rsgb.org.uk. I will now announce the results of the endorsement vote. I can report that Jonathan Groves, M0VRI, has received 109 votes, endorsing him as a nominated director. There were 8 votes against and 6 abstentions. Jonathan is therefore duly endorsed as a nominated director of the Society and will serve until the 2025 AGM. I can also report that Richard Horton, G4AOJ, has received 105 votes, endorsing him as a nominated director, and he will serve until the 2025 AGM.
Thank you, Stephen. I can also announce that there were 2 vacancies for elected directors. Only one candidate, Tony Miles, MM0TMZ, achieved the required number of nominations, so is elected unopposed. On behalf of the board, I congratulate Jonathan, Richard and Tony and welcome them to the board. Finally, there were regional representative vacancies for 8 regions. These were regions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 and 10. The following were elected unopposed and their appointments are due to start after this AGM. Excuse me. Region 1, Tony Miles, MM0TMZ. Region 2, Jim Campbell, MM7BIW. Region 3, Derek Hughes, G7LFC. Region 4, Ian Bowman, G7ESY. Region 5, Neil York, M0NKE. Region 8, Dave Parkinson, 2I0SJV. Region 9, Ron White, G6LTT. And Region 10, Keith Bird, G4JED. However, I need to report that Derek Hughes, G7LFC, has decided not to take up his role as regional representative in Region 3. So we shall be advertising for someone to be co-opted into this role until the next AGM. On behalf of the board, I congratulate all those who will be taking up their roles after the AGM and I welcome them to the regional team. This concludes the annual general meeting. Thank you for all your contributions to it. We now move to the informal part of the proceedings, and I will hand over to our President, Dr. Stuart Bryant, G3YSX, for a review of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was delighted to be able to record my review of the year at the Bawdsey Radar Museum recently. I hope you enjoy remembering me with the highlights of the year 2021.
Hello, I'm Stuart Bryant, G3YSX. I'm the 75th President of the Radio Society of Great Britain, and I am going to give you a review of the RSGB's activities for 2021. We are filming this at the Bawdsey Radar Museum in Suffolk, which is the site of the world's first operational radar station. Radar was developed here in the 1930s by a small team, several of whom were radio amateurs. And the story goes that the only technical publication they had was the Radio Amateurs Handbook, published by the RSGB. Radar was one of the most important electronic technologies to be developed, not only for its original defence and later safety of life purposes, but also as one of the incubators of the semiconductor technologies that have so transformed our lives. I regret that once again we're having to do this meeting remotely. We had hoped to meet face-to-face this year, but two factors combined to make this impossible. Firstly, there was concern over an infection spike at what we hope is the tail end of the COVID pandemic. There was also significant disruption to rail services due to engineering works on the planned meeting date, and these stretched from as far north as Glasgow all the way to the south coast. I will be at many events during the year and will be pleased to speak to anyone about RSGB matters. Most of the board will be at the convention in October, and we will try to find a way to speak to members face to face before that. In the past year, we have seen the passing of many amateur radio friends and colleagues. Regrettably, we have time to reflect on just a few. Our patron, the Duke of Edinburgh, sadly passed away on the 9th of April 2021. The RSGB was honoured to have been invited to his memorial service at Westminster Abbey on the 29th of March, where John Rogers, M0JAV, and myself paid our respects to our patron. We mark the passing of colleague Giles Reid, G1MFG, RSGB technical editor, a skilled engineer, a friend to many, who was suddenly taken away well before his time. Philip Brooks, G4NZQ, former member of the board, member of many RSGB committees and a cornerstone of the GB2RS service. And Tom O'Reilly, G0NSY, a popular member of the RSGB regional team. A moment's silence for these and our other departed friends. During 2021, COVID continued to severely restrict what we could do through much of the year. The level of restriction waxed and waned as the year progressed until finally, as I record this, the end does seem to finally be in sight. The National Radio Centre volunteers responded to the constantly changing rules and regulations and opened whenever it was safe to do so. The NRC team was boosted by an additional 12 volunteers to the team in 2021, and these helped us to keep the NRC open. Despite the COVID restrictions, nearly 57,000 visitors were introduced to amateur radio at the National Radio Centre in the year 2021. The RSGB membership is at its highest level in 11 years. We welcome many that have returned to amateur radio and then joined the RSGB, as well as those that have joined us for the first time. We believe that we have the largest growth in IARU Region 1. This is contra to the historic trend, and on behalf of us all, I thank RSGB members and staff that made this possible. One of the most successful methods used to build RSGB membership was online exams, and we spoke about this last year. In 2021, 3,600 people took remote exams. 2,045 passed at foundation level. This was enabled by 25 invigilators who administered 950 remote examination sessions. From October, club-based exams were resumed, and 43 people have used that approach. Across the 3,600 I mentioned earlier, the youngest was 8 and the oldest was 92. 199 were below 25 years of age, and 50% of those that took the intermediate licence in 2021 also took foundation licence in the same year. I thank the RSGB volunteers that made this possible, as well as those who provided the online training, face-to-face training and coaching mentoring that was behind this. I would like to extend a thank you to all of the RSGB committees, without whom much of what we deliver would not be possible. One committee, the EMC committee, I would like to call out especially. EMC plays a critical role in addressing a number of its existential threats to amateur radio. One of their work items was EMF. Under public pressure, Ofcom made changes to licences requiring an EMF assessment to be made, not just to us, but to all transmitter users. But unlike other users, we had the expertise to deal with this problem. This was a major work item. A number of innovative approaches were applied, including characterising whole classes of antenna to produce a simplified assessment. Work continues particularly below 10 MHz, where it turns out that no one really knows quite how to make these measurements in sufficient detail. This is a leading edge piece of work where the amateur radio community is working to the benefit of all radio users. The ability to conduct EMF assessments was brought to all radio amateurs through an online calculator, 3 videos which have had nearly 20,000 views, and a number of articles in Radcom. Whilst not everyone can continue with their existing antenna configurations, the evidence seems to be that a large proportion of stations can. The EMF licence conditions have been added to the latest version of the exam syllabus, version 1.5. I would also like to talk about contests. Contesting is a popular activity amongst members, and the club nature of many contests promotes operating within clubs that participate. The UK AC series had 800 stations enter and more participating. We ran 214 contests in 2021, 57 of these on HF and 157 on VHF, including 8 of these which were Hope QSO parties, which were part of the Christmas Get on the Air to Care campaign, which continued from last year into 2021. To put this in perspective, approximately 5% of RSGB members enter contests. Approximately half as many again submit logs. And a group as large as those that just submit logs also participate. These numbers are impressive, but remember that the number as a percentage of active radio amateurs is even larger. The RSGB Contest Committee processed 30,000 logs in 2021, and of these 2,723 were from the IOTA contest. There are 1,100 subscribers to the contest newsletter, and the contesting committees have been experimenting with new types of contests such as 2 metre FT8 and from 2022 70 centimetre FT8. I'd now like to talk about the Legacy Committee. The Legacy Fund is a sum of money donated to the RSGB and used for the development of amateur radio as a whole. The RSGB welcome proposed projects to support long-term common good in amateur radio. One of the projects recently approved was to add an amateur radio trailer to the Royal Signals Museum at Blandford. This was co-sponsored between the RSGB and a number of suppliers, and it was opened in September 21. It will be used both at the museum and in the surrounding areas to demonstrate amateur radio to the public. We also approved funding of a 50 MHz beacon project at the Sherwoods Observatory of Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society to study meteor events over the UK. This represents collaboration between the amateur radio and the radio astronomy community. More details of this will be given in the talk at the end of the AGM. This year, the RSGB also approved funding for some private mobile radio equipment to be used for training scouts in the operation of radio systems. And we are always on the lookout for project proposals that advance amateur radio and wireless communications, and hope that this message stimulates further project proposals. The RSGB convention is always a highlight of the year. Again, we were online with an anchor at the National Radio Centre. We had 5,000 views on the day, which was 38% up from last year. There were 800 new viewers, and these viewers were from the United States, from Australia, from the Netherlands, from Norway, from Spain and many other countries. We had our youngest ever presenters, the Steamettes, who were 11-year-old girls, and the A in Steamettes is because they do arts as well as the sciences. The keynote talked about the connection between amateur radio and mainstream science. Here, Catherine Mitchell, M0IBG, from the University of Bath, spoke about the connection between radio technology and space sciences. I enjoyed making 190 QSOs using the call sign GB4RS from the NRC during the event. And these included my first 9 on QO100. All the convention talks are available on the RSGB YouTube channel, and you can catch up with any that you missed or wish to watch again from the YouTube series. We encourage you to subscribe to the RSGB YouTube channel so as to not miss any new content that we publish. Continuing on the theme of video, the Tonight at 8 webinar series streams an eclectic mix that covers all aspects of amateur radio. In the year 2021, we streamed 11 programs which had 33,000 views. I would like to give a special thanks to David, G7URP and Tammy, M0TC, for donating their time and production skills to this work. Thanks also to the time and work of the volunteers and staff that work in the background to make this happen. And thanks, of course, to all of the speakers. Tonight at 8 has continued with the Summer 2022 series just in gestation. Continuing further on videos, the RSGB has also produced the Do You Know series. These are really short videos, and so far we have covered propagation, planning, GB2RS, EMF and membership. Continuing with self-education, which is of course a key aspect of amateur radio, the RSGB has a product catalogue of 285 items, which are mostly publications. And we added 18 new publications in the year 2021. In 2021, we shipped 40,000 items. These items are not only of educational benefit, but profits contribute to the funding of our many activities. Then there is Radcom, together with its sister publications, Radcom Basics and Radcom Plus. Radcom published 250 club stories, 200 technical pages, 109 feature pages, and 68 review pages in 2021. The RADCOM archive going back to October 2013 is available free to members online. And much of the radio communications back catalogue is available to purchase on CD or on memory key. I'd now like to talk about the IARU, the International Amateur Radio Union. This is the coordinating body that coordinates the work of many member societies, such as the RSGB. This is not, of course, a substitute for the member societies themselves. The IARU is divided into 3 regions, and Region 1 consists of 100 member societies representing 100 countries in Europe, Africa and Near Asia. IARU Region 1 met as a group virtually from the 15th to the 24th of October. There were 2 short formal meetings which bookended the Shaping the Future workshop. In addition, Murray Nyman, G6JYB, the Spectrum Forum Chair, and I attended the Region 3 Asia virtual meeting as observers. Shaping the Future was a programme led by Don Beattie, G3BJ, in his role as the IARU Region 1 President, with a view to modernising amateur radio and making it suitable for the future. There was a concern as to whether a virtual workshop like this would work. It worked brilliantly. We started with input as a SWOT analysis, and the RSGB collected the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats opinions from RSGB members, and we published this work in August 2021 in Radio Communication, RADCOM. Thank you for your input to this work. The output of the workshop we also published in RADCOM, and we published that in the February 2022 edition. So I encourage you to look there for more details. We're now entering the planning phase with a series of workshops that would welcome additional volunteers. It is anticipated that the member societies will deliver the modernisation proposals within their own countries, and some funding for this is available from the IARU. The RSGB will certainly take a keen interest in the output and seek to implement anything that we think will be of benefit to amateur radio in the UK. I would like to talk about an important commemorative event that took place in 2021. The first shortwave crossing of the Atlantic happened on the evening of Saturday the 11th of December, Sunday the 12th of December, 1921. This was the first shortwave crossing of the Atlantic. This was financially helped by the ARRL, who funded Paul Godley, 2ZE, to cross the Atlantic and establish a receiver, and he heard the first confirmed amateur radio transmission in the UK that originated in the United States. This event had profound effects on history. Started a technology, started an industry, and it started social media with citizens now able to talk to each other across the globe for free. So I'd like to thank the Kilmarnock and Loughton Radio Club for running the commemorative station at Ardrossan, which started the on-air celebration of this historic event. Rick Niswander, KG7GM, and Bob Barden, MD0CCE, each received a Scottish Quaich, which is a drinking cup, donated by GMDX for being the first stations from North America and the United Kingdom to complete contacts with both the ARRL headquarter station W1AW and GB2ZE during the QSO party. The RSGB donated an identical Quaich to the ARRL as a token of thanks for their important contribution to the birth of global shortwave communication in 1922. The RSGB has created a video that commemorates this event and in particular the celebration in Dresden. Please take a look at our YouTube channel to see this video. I would like to give a special thanks to Nick Totterdell, G4FAL, the HF contest chair, who in addition to all his contest duties has organised many of the commemorative events at HF that have happened in recent years. I would particularly like to note his innovative use of the RSGB contest club, G6XX, which has enabled us to gain and manage the club call sign groups that were key to many of our commemorative events over the past few years. Many clubs are returning to normal post-COVID, but unfortunately by no means all. For a good reason, lots of club members are still unwilling to mix and some venues still have restrictions. The clubs that have met online and adopted hybrid methods seem to be best placed for the future. Rallies are slowly returning, and the big events later in this year, 2022, the Hamfest, the convention, and the big overseas shows look like they are returning to the calendar. We face new challenges though. Just as we can see the light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, we face new global challenges such as rising fuel costs, inflation, supply chain issues still remain, and there is still a semiconductor shortage. Fortunately, radio amateurs are a resourceful, innovative community. Amateur radio is a relatively modest cost activity, and radio amateurs share knowledge and help each other through difficulties. Despite the dreadful personal and financial consequences of COVID, we have emerged stronger than we were before this misfortune fell on the world. I'm sure these new challenges will also make us stronger. On a lighter note and a happier note, there are a number of festive commemorative events in 2022 to look forward to. The BBC, the benchmark of public broadcasting, is currently celebrating 100 years of broadcasting. The Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty the Queen will take place this year, and we have many events planned. See Radcom for details, but also watch the RSGB website, which will always have the latest information and details of any changes. I would like to call out thanks to Alan Messenger, G0TLK, for leading this work on behalf of the RSGB. This year we'll also see the Commonwealth Games with events planned. Again, see Radcom and of course the RSGB website for the latest information. It just remains for me to thank Bawdsey Radar Museum for their hospitality. And for those of you watching on the day, we return to the live proceedings.
Thank you, Stuart, for your review of this exceptional year. We now come to the presentation of trophies. We commence the presentation of the major society trophies for 2021. These will be announced by the General Manager, Steve Thomas, M1ACB, and the President, Stuart Bryant, G3YSX. Over to Stuart.
Sorry, I apologise. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start with the Founders Cup. This is awarded for outstanding services to the Society. We're delighted this year to award it to John Rogers, M0JAV, Ian White, GM3SEK, Peter Zolman, G4DSE, and the team, Greg Lappin, N9GL, Richard Tell, K5UJU, Matt Butcher, KC3WD, and Kai Shivak, KE4PT. This award is in recognition to their contribution to the collaborative work with the RSGB on helping amateurs to achieve EMF compliance.
And the next trophy is the Jock Kyle Memorial Award, as awarded to the Scottish Club Society or RSGB member thought to have done the most in Scotland in the field of VHF in the past year. And this year it goes to Jim Edgar, GM4 FVM. Jim has been a long-time supporter of VHF activity in Scotland. His quiet manner belies the significant contribution he has made through his regular presence on the air, supported by a highly respected blogspot, propagation studies, and encouragement and support to other VHF enthusiasts.
And now we present the Jack Wiley Trophy. This is awarded to the Scottish Club Society or RSGB member thought to have done the most for amateur radio in Scotland during the past year. This year, this goes to Gordon Patterson, MM0GPZ. Gordon operates a highly competitive contest station from his home QTH using his contest call sign Mike 2 November. He is also very active chasing rare DX stations. He is a regular traveller to Ireland to take part in the IOTA contest. In addition to this, he is a keen portable operator and has a wide range of interests, including VHF. He is undoubtedly one of the top operators in Scotland and is a worthy recipient of the Jack Wiley Trophy.
And now the Courtenay Price Trophy, which is awarded for the most outstanding technical contribution to amateur radio. And this is awarded to John Rogers, M0JAV, Ian White, GM3SEK, and Peter Zollman, G4DSE, for demonstrating EMF compliance.
And now the Ostermeyer Trophy. This is awarded for the most meritorious description of a piece of home constructed or electronic equipment published in Radcom in 2021. This goes to Gordon Lean, G3WJG, for an SDR transceiver for amateur bands, which was published in Radcom in October 2021.
The Norman Keith Adams Prize is awarded for the most original article published in Radcom in 2021. And this is awarded to Ian Miles, G0CNN, for QRM finding and elimination. And that was published in Radcom in September 2021.
And now the Bennett Prize, the G8 per PF. This is awarded for any significant contribution or innovation which furthers the art of radio communication. This year, this was awarded to Marcus Walden, G0IJZ, for a brief look at NEC 5. This was published in Radcom in March 2021.
The Wortley Talbot Trophy is awarded for the most outstanding experimental work in amateur radio. And this is awarded this year to Steve Nichols, G0KYA, for 10 meters medium distance propagation via FT8. And this was published in Radcom in March 2021.
And now the Kenwood Trophy. This is awarded for a significant contribution to training and development in amateur radio within the United Kingdom. This year, this goes to the online amateur radio community, known by their call sign M0OUK, and is for providing online training resources at foundation, intermediate, and full level.
The Harold Rose Trophy is awarded for outstanding contribution to 50 megahertz. And this year it goes to Dick Hyde, G0LFF, for demonstration and persistence being rewarded with good results on 50 megahertz.
And now the Fraser Shepherd Award. This is awarded for research into microwave applications for radio communications. And this year, this goes to Barry Chambers, G8AGN, for leading work at 122 gigahertz and 30 terahertz.
The 1962 Committee Cup is awarded for outstanding amateur development at VHF, UHF. And this year it's awarded to Frank Schmulling, DL2 ALF, for the outstanding development of AirScout software for aircraft scatter.
And now the Don Cameron G4 STT Memorial Award. This is awarded for an outstanding contribution to low power amateur radio communication. And this year it goes to Ian Keyser, G3ROO, for outstanding contributions to the QRP world.
The Les Barclay Memorial Award is awarded to recognise those who have made excellent contributions to propagation research and understanding, ranging from conducting original research through to spreading knowledge about propagation and inspiring interest amongst amateurs. And this year it's awarded to Chris Deacon, G4 IFX, for his ongoing research into the 6-metre sporadic E-propagation. Chris is currently studying for a PhD, and this work is going towards his final thesis.
And finally, in this section, we have the Calcutta Key. This is awarded for outstanding service to international friendship through amateur radio. There would be no international friendship through amateur radio were we not able to safely run the necessary RF power levels needed to communicate through the background noise and the challenges of difficult propagation conditions. We are awarding this, the Calcutta Key, to John Rogers, M0JAV, for his strong leadership to the team of national and international experts that have built a firm understanding of the methods of determining when our amateur radio stations comply with the required RF safety requirements, for developing and testing a reliable and simple application for testing compliance, and for helping so many to understand how to do the required safety assessments. We will now announce the winners of the construction competition. I would like to thank everyone who submitted an entry for this year's competition. We had a large number of entries and the judges were very impressed by the standard. We hope to feature some of these projects in future RADCOM issues. Each category winner will receive £150. Due to the high standard, the judges have also chosen a runner-up in 3 of the categories. These people will win a £50 RSGB book voucher. The overall winner will receive an additional £150 and the Pat Hawker G3VA award. I will start with the beginners. The winner was Enzo Nicosia, M0KTZ, for an indoor HF wire loop for QRP operations. The runner-up in this section was Mark Gilchrist, M0TMR, for a Mozzarino kit build.
The second category is the Construction Excellence category, and here the winner is Paul Hughes, G4VQI, for his HF hamband receiver based on the G2DAF design. And we have a runner-up in this category, that's Roger Davis, G3IUZ, for a complete DATV station.
And now for innovation. The winner is Jacques Lepaul, F1BHL, for a portable 3-meter dish for 23 SEMS and 13 centimeter bands.
And in the software category, the winner is Colin Murray, GM4EAU, for WATT, the WATT, the Whisper Analysis and Traffic Tool. And the runner-up is Tim Clark, MW0RUD, for the RIDE DATV receiver software. And
now, the overall construction competition winner and the recipient of the Pat Hawker G3VA award. This year, this goes to Paul Hughes, G4VQI, for his HF hamband receiver based on the G2DAF design. Right. Now, before Ian continues, I'm pleased to announce a further award. Ian Shepherd, G4EVK, has contributed to the RSGB in many roles over many years. However, the most demanding of these roles, taking huge amounts of his personal time and energy, has been the role of chair of the RSGB board, a position that he has held these last 4 years. Beyond Ian's other interests, beyond radio, his other passions are model engineering and woodwork. And as a token of our thanks to Ian, we present him with a £200 voucher for Axminster Tools to enhance his workshop capabilities. We also present him with an honorary life membership of the Radio Society of Great Britain. Ian, many thanks for your dedicated service to the RSGB. Over to you.
I think my comment to that will be shock horror. You kept that very quiet. That was really cool. Thank you very much, everybody. That's very welcome, and I shall spend the voucher very wisely. Thank you. I now have to carry on, unfortunately. Thank you, Steve and Stuart. May I add my congratulations to all of our worthy winners of the construction competition and to those who won trophies and awards. Thank you. That concludes the presentations. On your behalf, I express thanks to David and Tammy Palmer for providing production and the streaming service for today's meeting, and to the HQ staff and RSGB volunteers for organising the presentations. The AGM takes much time and effort to put together, and inputs from many departments ensure all run smoothly on the day. Members have been given the opportunity to submit questions in advance of the meeting today. Members of the board will answer some of those questions after we take a 30-minute break. During this break, we shall show a video about having fun with electronics, coding, and amateur radio. Encouraging young people to learn more about amateur radio is important to all of us. Jonathan Groves, M0VRI, was co-opted to the board in January to carry out a youth review, and he will be sharing his findings in the July RADCON. Convention presentation we are about to see is again a reminder of what can be achieved by youngsters with some effort, ingenuity, and much fun. The video will run for approximately 30 minutes, after which we will return on the live stream. Thank you very much. See you later.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. Hello, my name is Millie.
Hi, my name is Alice.
Hello, I'm Natalie, Nat for short.
Hi, I'm John, G7OHO. As well as being involved with the Hilderstone Radio Society, I help with the observatory at the Monkton Nature Reserve. I was asked by a primary school to give a talk about stars and planets, which I did. And we did an experiment with all the children to measure the size of the Earth, Eratosthenes experiment, which involved taking measurements of the shadow of the sun on the spring equinox, and we combined our results with those from other schools around the world. They then asked me to start a coding club, which I did, and I used the Arduino. Now, at the time, the Arduino was not as popular as it is now, and I struggled to find other schools interested in the Arduino. But I was able to find Joe and Julie in Australia, who use the Arduino with their children in the primary school. So we had a challenge to set up a project, an artwork that involved flashing LEDs. The challenge with the children in Australia led to Joe and Julie sending me lots of kits to make multi-vibrator circuits. So that was very generous of them, sending it in the post with lots of information and guides and so on. So we made the multi-vibrator on a breadboard, and then later we soldered all the bits together to make the hypnotic owl.
We were very lucky to be sent these hypnotic owl kits by Joe and Julie from Australia to help us learn more about electronics and circuits. The end result is an owl with flashing blue LED eyes. The kit comes with everything needed and easy to follow instructions. My favourite bit of the build was soldering components to the printed circuit board. This was my first try at soldering and I really enjoyed it. This one, it's basically the same thing, apart from there are some different arrangements because this mini breadboard is bigger than the actual circuit board. But it does the same thing. It wasn't us who really got to choose whether we did it on the breadboard or the circuit board first. But I think it was because it was our first time soldering, and we also had to make sure that everyone knew where to put the things. We also had to learn what all the numbers and letters meant on them. And so it was just getting used to knowing what it would do when it worked. Along here on the breadboard, which is a bit moved about on the circuit board, those are the resistors. And those are what you use to, you can use them to speed up the flashing of the lights and things. This one is a transistor, and it's what makes the lights flash, so it switches the lights on and off. And the LEDs are there because they're the lights that are flashing, and they're the eyes of the owl. The bit with the soldering was everyone's first time, so no one was better or worse at it than anyone else. And then we also got to do it ourselves, which is one of the best bits about it, because no one did it for us, and we got to do it ourselves. And the adults were really just there to supervise. Well, after we had actually got everything on the circuit, we had to cut a picture of this out from, I can't remember what we had to cut it out of. I think it was a sheet or something. And we were told to cut it out and stick it on the front of like some cardboard, so that it was more sturdy, because it would just flap around because it's just paper. And we had to make holes in the cardboard for the eyes, and then you just push the LEDs in.
Teaching soldering to youngsters wasn't easy. I enlisted the help of other club members who went round to make sure that they had proper solder joints. Yeah, the children loved it, of course, especially when they switched on and the lights started to flash. The Hildestone Radio Society offered to do a Christmas tree soldering exercise with the children. They bought the kit and we helped them to solder to make the flashing lights on the Christmas tree, which they loved, of course.
So this is the Christmas tree. One of the reasons why this is actually my favourite one is because we had a lot more space to put like the things on, because there's more space with the LEDs and things. And I was better at the soldering as well.
Today I'm going to show you how to make a paper circuit. You might want to use a paper circuit because it's a lot easier than any other circuit. If you're a beginner, then it would be much easier to do this circuit before any other circuit. So what you're going to need to make this paper circuit is some copper tape, a button battery, some scissors, and an LED. It can be any color you like. You can have many different templates and you can find them online. You could have these, but for today, I'm just going to use this. Okay, so first you need to get your copper tape and you need to make sure that you have enough for the whole way around over here. So do not cut it where the corners are, because the sticky part of the copper tape, it's not very good with the connection. So if you just fold it, then it makes the connection a lot better. And the way you fold it is you fold it the opposite way where you want to go, the opposite direction, and then you put it on top of that in the right way, like this. So I'm just going to make sure that I have enough copper tape for the whole circuit. Okay, now that I have enough, I'm just going to cut it at the end. I'm then going to take the white bit off. Not all of it though, I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. Sometimes it's hard to get them separated, but you'll get there. So now I'm just going to stick it down. Okay. Making sure that I'm folding it at the corners. There we go. Now all of the copper tape has been stuck on. Now just cut the tape in between the two lines where the LED is going to be. Now I'm going to put on an LED, and there are two different sides. There's the short side and the long side. On your template, it should show where each of them should go. So I'm just going to put it like that. I have some tape here so that I can stick it down on top. And don't put it underneath the copper tape, make sure it's on top, otherwise it won't connect. Now the LED has been stuck on. And now I'm going to stick on the button battery. Okay, there we go. Now the button battery has been stuck on. And there is a bit where you should fold the paper, which is going to be there. So I'm going to fold it in the right place so that when you put it on top, it should connect. This bit should go on top of this and connect and light up the LED. Now the paper circuit works and it lights up. Here is a paper circuit that I made earlier. This one also lights up. I would also like to add that you should make sure to keep the button batteries away from children and animals, because if they swallow them, the effects can be devastating.
With my amateur radio background, I wanted to include some amateur radio style projects. So the first one we did was the snail Morse key, which was quite straightforward to construct. So we bought bits of wood and the cable ties and what have you, and they all made a buzzer. So of course they had to learn Morse code, which we did learn a few letters each week.
The snail Morse key was provided by the Hildeston Radio Society and were our first our very first Morse keys. This was a simple build using a small slab of wood as the base, 2 drawing pins, a cable tie, a battery pack, and a buzzer that made sound. The key is very effective and easy to use. In fact, I used it throughout my beginner's Morse course with the Long Island CW Club. The cable tie goes around the buzzer, and that means that you can attach the drawing pin and poke it through, and it will stay in the same place so that it can make sound the same every time. There are 2 of the red wires, so I'm presuming these 2 ones from the battery and the buzzer, and they're connected to these 2 drawing pins, and when you push the top one onto the bottom one, it creates a sound. And when you remove your finger, it stops making the sound, so that's how you control the sound. When I send my name or something like an M, you just press it down for as long as you need and then lift it back up.
I came across the Citron Arduino kit. It's a very good price. You got the Citron Arduino, which had built-in LEDs and buzzer, and had a breadboard with all the bits and pieces. And we went through the guide, learning how to turn on and off an LED, and worked through the guide to do the music. And once they mastered all this, we did some projects. Each child thought of a project. They said, what could I do? So we had a variety of projects. We had a piano using push-button keys, yeah. We had the parking one with the ultrasonic sensor, and traffic lights, a whole variety of different projects which they worked on themselves.
Here I have the Arduino Maker Uno kit, and I have used it to create a simple parking sensor. So if I turn it on and just see the red LED comes on, and the further it moves away, the further apart the beats are. And the Maker Uno is very good for this kind of thing because it has all sorts of step-by-step tutorials, and if you just want to make something with just sound or just LEDs, there are actually LEDs and a buzzer built into the kit. Here is the buzzer. It's very clearly labelled. They've done a very good job of labelling it. So here's the buzzer, and along this side here, where you see all these little holes, next to them you've got all these little LEDs. So you see some of them are flashing with the green one. And if I bring it closer, the one that turns on the red one also lights up. And in the full kit, what you get is the breadboard, the coding board itself, you get a motor and fan, you get some resistors to stop the LEDs exploding, and you also get a variety of LEDs and some capacitors to make it beep. Lots of different wires, and there's lots of other stuff you can get that's compatible or that you can buy separately, but the basic kit itself is, I believe, only around £16, so you can have a lot of fun with it for not a very expensive price. So this is an ultrasound sensor. So this part sends out a signal, and when it hits an object like my ticket, it bounces off and it's received by this part. And the time it takes, it's able to convert that into distance. On my laptop here, I have the code, and this is the setup, and here. So if distance is less than 3, which is 3 centimeters, it puts LED 7, which is the red one here, to high, which means it turns on and it makes the tone a solid tone. But if the distance is different, then I've set up the code to make sure it has delays in between depending on the distance. I'm using the app Arduino, the Arduino app, and up here it's got verify, which is how you can make sure your code does not have any bugs, and here you can upload it to your board. If you have the kit, the instructions are completely free, I believe, and to buy the ultrasound sensor, it's not that much extra. And when I was making this, it was a good idea to use all different coloured wires, so I knew where each wire was going. And what I did is I took a photo, so I knew where all the parts had to go. These kits are nice and cheap, but they work really well.
Yeah, these projects were so good that I thought they've got to show these off to other school children. So at the Big Bang Science Fair, which is held at Pfizer every year, some of the girls showed their projects and showed their snail Morse key. And these are primary school children, but at the fair, secondary school children came along. So they tested them. Do you know your phonetic alphabet? Can you say your name in Morse, all this kind of thing? And the secondary school children were amazed at what these year 5, year 6 children could do, and the projects they thought were amazing. So everything was going very well with their projects and the Big Bang Science Fair, which perhaps at the time shouldn't have gone ahead with the COVID striking. This was in March 2020, but it went ahead, and as I say, COVID struck. So we stopped all activities for about 9 months, whatever, and nothing happened. But then we thought, well, let's do Zoom. So we did Zoom projects with the BBC microbit, and it's not easy correcting circuits over Zoom. It was very difficult, but we got there. We did the basic things with the BBC microbit, version 2, which is excellent because it's got a built-in microphone and speaker. You don't need an external one like the old version. So we were able to get the BBC microbit to play songs, speak even, and they were able to do logic programs using the buttons A and B. And at the time, I wanted to learn Morse. So I went on a course, the CW Ops course, and I thought, why not do the same thing for the girls? So the girls, I enlisted on the Long Island CW Club course, which they kindly did 12 o'clock their time, so 5 o'clock our time, and the girls learned Morse. And that led then to the idea of Morse texting, using the buttons A and B for dits and dars.
We bought the NanoKey kits from Phoenix Kits to try building our own straight key for Morse code. They were quite simple to build with very good instructions and just one PCB connector to be soldered. We can connect the key direct to an amateur radio setup for sending Morse code or to our BBC microbits to use the speaker to create sound. So this is the NanoKey, and this connects into here, and you can connect it to the computers, but I've got it connected to a buzzer and a battery pack, and it makes the sound. There are a few things in the top here. I think they're just to hold the whole thing together. So there's a few things in there. This little ring here. But we have the board, and we had to put like everything in. It was basically there were no parts of it that were together already, so we had to do all of it. And these bits on the bottom are to help it like stand We were sent the proper big Morse keys, and they were big, and we got to wire them up to a breadboard and make them work, and that was how we originally powered the nano key, and then we could of course plug it into the computer, and then we got these fixed on the end so it could connect to the microbit, and the microbit could send Morse code or use the speaker on it to send Morse code. When our first Morse radio communication was with Nigel, and we had a radio brought in and everything, and we plugged our nano keys into the thing, and we had a conversation there, and we were following like this script because obviously it was going quite fast. We would either use it for the speaker for the nano key, but we could also code the microbit itself to send Morse, and it would use the speaker to project it. And also at one point we connected or coded the microbit to send, but when we pressed it, it wouldn't. Normally it would come up on ours with the sound of the Morse, but it didn't, and we had two microbits. We coded both of them to send and receive. So we would put it on one, so we would send something like hello, and it would come out on the other microbit. But you wouldn't know if you got it right or wrong or not. So that would be one of the only problems with it. You wouldn't know if you got it wrong.
I got the idea of the telegraph from Joe and Julie, and they've got their grid with the battleships. So we use their grid to play the game Battleships, because you send square E5 sending Morse. So it's good practice of Morse, and it's fun as well. So yes, I enjoyed that very much.
Today, me and Caitlin are going to play a quick game of Battleships. And you can see my grid here. The X's are where I've put my battleships, and Caitlin doesn't know where they are.
We're using the nano key to send Morse via the microbit, using the cables which connect to the other microbit. I'm going to send an E5.
It's a mess. I'm going to send a dit back so she knows she missed. Now I'm going to send back a B2.
It's a hit.
Yay!
There's an onboard radio on the BBC microbit, and we programmed it so that it could send dits and dars using radio waves. And we tested this out, and we got quite a big range, about 100 meters range between the two microbits. Yeah, so of course that then led to their article in Radcom.
Not that long ago, we had a small where we went down to the North Foreland Lighthouse, and we were going to send out Morse to see if anyone came back, and we also did some speaking over the radio as well, and that was quite fun. It was over the span of 2 days, and we got to speak to some people over the radio, and a few people came back on the Morse as well.
One of the coding projects we did with the girls was the Astro Pi. You've got the display, which is in colour, and we did the Mission Zero with the European Space Agency. You send a 30-second message to the astronauts on the International Space Station, but they have to code in Python. So not easy for primary school children, but they managed it. And this gave me an idea for animations. You can make pictures animate on the screen, and the children took part in an art exhibition at Margate, where they each did an animation to do with astronomy, because the theme of the exhibition was light and the cosmos. So we had different projects, the planets, the black hole, rockets, and so on. So they had to program the AstroPi in Python to do this. So that's where the art comes in. So now they are the STEAMettes, because they've incorporated art. So science, technology, engineering, art, and maths. And the ETS, the STEAMettes, is because we've ended up with only girls, and they like the idea that they're special. We're the STEAMettes. But they've since rebranded themselves the Morse Ninja STEAMettes, because they're so, well, fluent in Morse. Radio Surfer Award has been a good incentive to get them doing things and giving me ideas, inspiration. And one of the things was the FunCube satellite. They downloaded a greetings message, which was personal to them, greetings to Millie and Caitlin and Alice. So they downloaded that, but they're now using it for a CQ, right? So there's a fitter message on the FunCube satellite, which is saying, CQ, CQ, please respond to Alice, Caitlin and Millie, and Natalie. Please send your QSL card, and they've got quite a collection already.
The FunCube is a very small satellite which is only 10 centimetres cubed. The FunCube satellite is a project to encourage young people to communicate with space hardware. FunCube 1 was launched in November 2013, and in December 2018, FunCube 2 was launched from Russia. It flies in an orbit above the Earth at 600 kilometers, and it is traveling at 41,000 kilometers per hour. It orbits the Earth every 90 minutes, and this is the FunCube. So the FunCube satellite is around 10 centimeters cubed, and here is a model of it with plastic straws and cardboard. We received a message from the FunCube using a large antenna called the Yagi-Uda. The CQ message we received was our names. We have received cards from all over the world, including Slovakia, Indonesia, and even the BBC. So you can use this piece of software called the FunCube dashboard, where you can find out about the antenna temperature, and you can find out about the battery voltage and the panel voltage. You need a Yagi-Uda antenna, which can be known as a Yagi, to point at the sky, which you can, and you have to do it at a certain angle, which you can find out the software.
Well, this Surfer Award gave me the idea that they should make contact with another country. So I wrote to the Dunkirk Radio Society in French, and they replied, yes, it'd be good to make a contact. So we set it all up, and they communicated with Robert, F1 FXN, and that went extremely well. I had my doubts if it would work. We just had a handheld and a Yagi going across the water there, but the signals were perfect, 5 and 9. Yeah, so great success, and it will lead hopefully to other communications with their scouts and our scouts.
F1 FXN GOHRS. Je m'appelle Caitlin, Charlie, Alpha, India, Tango, Lima, India, November.
Okay, Kathleen. Nice. My name is Robert, Romeo Oscar Bravo Echo Romeo Tango, and I'm living in Waplage.
F-A-F-X N2G0HRS. Je m'appelle Alice.
I understood immediately you were speaking French. Ben, content de t'entendre, Alice. Tu feras un gros bisou à tes amis aussi.
Je m'appelle Natalie. November, Alpha, Tango, Alpha, Lima, India, Echo. Je m'appelle Millie. Mike, India, Lima, Lima, Yankee.
Hello, Millie. I'm happy to hear you this evening, and I hope to listen about you all another time. B73, 88 for girls. This is F1 FXN, transmission finished.
I have to say that Millie, when she first joined the group, was very shy, didn't like talking to grown-ups, was very not a child to put her hand up in class even if she knew the answer. And over the course of the last 2 years where she's been part of the club, she's come on in leaps and bounds. She's now able to stand up and present in front of large groups, talk to children who are a couple of years older than her to tell them what she knows and can help share her knowledge. It's built her confidence immensely, hugely. It's been fabulous.
Before COVID struck, I had in mind for them all to do their foundation license. But of course that was on hold. But now I feel they're ready to get their license. So we started training. They learnt about electric fields, magnetic fields, to understand a little bit about what microfaraday did, which then of course led to Maxwell's equations. I'm not teaching them the equations, but the idea that we have electromagnetic waves, which are radio waves. Yeah, so we're working our way through the course, and the technical aspects, it's GCSE level, but they're getting there. I've done some worksheets for them, so they're doing it practically based.
Next, they're going to do their radio licence, they're going to do their foundation radio licence, and possibly their intermediate, which obviously they will use to communicate here in Planet and then across, hopefully, globally, and it will encourage resilience, which is what we want from young people today, and we want from our 4 young girls. And so they will do a little exam, which hopefully they'll be successful with, and then know that they can achieve whatever they want to do.
We've been covering subjects, especially with the radio amateur licence learning, that they won't touch on in school until GCSE and even A-level.
It's been brilliant because they've had so many great opportunities to do activities that they didn't even think were existing. With the space station, they have been downloading images, for example, sending messages to a satellite. They've done wonderful things, and they've learned Morse code, which at such a young age is probably can be quite daunting, but they embraced it because they went step by step. They've done coding, and especially a lot of STEM, which a lot of girls are not predominantly thinking of doing. So what started as an after-school club soon became much bigger because they had an interest. They were having fun, they were with friends, and they were finding all these activities so different, so varied, and so interesting, and really happy to talk to their friends and say, well, I've done this and I've done this.
Give it a go, grab it with both hands, see what you can do, because it will be more than you think you can.
Welcome back, everybody. I shall now ask the members of the board to answer the questions that were submitted. We've had a good number of and wide range of questions. So the first question comes from David Barlow, G3PLE. Board members' tenure is limited according to the constitution of the RSGB. Will the board at its first meeting after the AGM review the chairmanship of all its sub and committees according to the terms and conditions of those committees and adhere to the spirit and intention of those terms of reference in ensuring new blood is given a chance? I'll take the opportunity of replying to that question. David, you are correct that the Society encouraging the refreshing of committee positions to ensure succession planning and avoidance of gaps in support of the membership. It must be, however, recognised that many of the committee roles are time-consuming and require expertise beyond that could be expected from the membership in general. We thank those who want to continue to undertake all of those important positions. The board maintains an oversight of all committees, receives regular reports and presentations, and encourages members with relevant experience and expertise to come forward and support committee work. Committee chairs are appointed by the board, usually following recommendation from the committee members. This ensures a good working relationship between the committee members, ensuring common objectives. I am sure that the new board, after this AGM, will continue to review your comments and hopefully make some progress towards your comment. Thank you. I move now to question 2, which was submitted by Steve Hartley, G0FUW. This was submitted to David Wilson, but David's not here, so it will be answered by Jonathan Groves. And the question is, prior to 2019, year in, year out, we were used to seeing about half as many intermediate exam candidates as there were foundation exam passes. In the April RAGCOM, the chair of the Examination Standards Committee reported that intermediate exam candidates in 2021, 750 candidates, were only about 1/3 of the foundation numbers at 2,085 candidates. Could a board member explain how this shows that progression through the levels is largely unaffected by the syllabus changes as stated in the Exam Standards Committee report? Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon to you all. The answer I'll read represents the combined response of Dave Wilson, M0OBW, and indeed myself. All the RSGB can do is offer the exams, and has been seen, since the introduction of remotely invigilated online exams, the numbers taking exams increased dramatically. No one could have foreseen the effect the pandemic would have on so many aspects of our lives, including exam progression. It's our belief that the slight dip in intermediate candidate numbers is caused not by the change in syllabus, but by 2 different factors. Firstly, the fact that remotely invigilated intermediate exams were not available as early as foundation ones. And secondly, during lockdown, most clubs weren't meeting, so weren't offering any sort of training opportunities, which is more necessary for intermediate because of the level of technical knowledge required. It's thanks to the efforts of groups like Essex Ham and GM6DX, which you may know as Getting to Grips, and later on the online amateur radio community and Bath-based distant learning, that online training became available. Last year, the intermediate figures returned to their normal range, but foundation, while it dropped back from its peak in 2020, was still significantly up on the 2019 figures. Last year again, about 1/3 of those that sat the intermediate exam had taken the foundation exam the same year, and almost 1/5 of those taking the full exam took both the foundation and intermediate in the same year. When the pandemic ends, we're confident that progression from foundation to intermediate rates will improve with no corrective action required. Another question was raised about offering candidates failing an exam a resit at half price. The cost of administering an exam is the same if it's the first time or a resit. From the data we have, most people who fail the exam come back after doing some revision and take it again. So the cost of a resit clearly doesn't play a big part in people's desire to join this fascinating hobby. Compare the cost of the exam to the cost of an entry-level VHF/UHF radio. It's interesting to note that the RYA Marine VHF exam costs only £25, but you have to pay the RYA £60 to issue you the short-range certificate which proves you passed this exam. Another member suggested that many intermediate and full licence holders are unhappy with the foundation licence holders being given access to all the HF bands, and suggests that foundation licence holders should only have access to UHF and just one HF band, and intermediate should get access to a few more bands, but not all of them. Well, this somewhat elitist view perpetuates the discrimination which some foundation licence holders already feel from some of those who've chosen to progress to higher levels. This discrimination is even felt by some holders of the modern full licence, who sometimes hear from operators who've held licences for decades that exams are too easy nowadays, that multiple choice is too easy to guess, and that remote invigilation is too easy to cheat. We should each remember that we're all drawn together by this fascinating hobby and have more in common than we have differences. It seems unlikely that foundation licensees with their 10-watt limit would have any noticeable effect on enjoyment of HF bands by holders of higher levels anyway. And whatever way you look at it, the discussion's academic in any case, because it's Ofcom who decide what privileges should be awarded to different classes of licence, not the RSGB. I'll now hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. The third question was submitted by Sean Finch, M0OEG, and will be answered by Len. The question was, would the RSGB and Ofcom not consider the reinstating of a licence fee? Hopefully, this would help to fund with regard to complaints. Of any kind, I think a licence fee of £100 per year should be mandatory. Len.
Thank you for that question. Unfortunately, licence fees are a matter reserved to Ofcom alone to manage, and they've previously ignored the RSGB's concerns on the subject when this was raised with them. A licence fee of about £100 per annum would likely to have a serious impact on the number of people obtaining and retaining amateur radio licence, with no guarantee that the additional income would be ring-fenced for improving Ofcom's enforcement of the amateur radio service. In a meeting with Ofcom in 2021 to discuss on-air jamming routes, Ofcom indicated that they'd only had about half a dozen reported complaints in recent years. The RSGB carried out its own survey requesting details of reports to Ofcom and came up with a similar number of complaints. With so few recorded complaints via Ofcom, it would be easy for Ofcom to argue that the additional resources are not necessary and they're already meeting their duties detailed in their charter. Of course, we know that the situation in reality is much worse than admitted by Ofcom, but we need to prove it. Regardless of whether you think it's pointless or not, or a complete waste of time, you're right to report any instance of jamming and abuse on the air directly to Ofcom. Ofcom will not accept complaints from the RSGB, but we would welcome a copy of your report, including an incident number, to be sent to the Operating Advisory Service, as this allows us to assess the size of the problem. Videos of how to complain to Ofcom are available on the OAS pages of the RSGB website. Without this information, we have no ammunition to prove that change is actually required. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Len. The next question is submitted by Trevor, M5 AKA, and this is going to be answered by Steve. How many individual, excludes affiliated societies, UK resident members does the RSGB have? How many of those receive free memberships because they are under 26 and in full-time education? Steve.
Well, thanks for the question, Trevor. We checked this yesterday, and there are currently 19,934 individual UK members. So that excludes clubs, societies, groups. And of those, 190 take advantage of the offer of free membership because they're licensed and either under the age of 21 or under the age of, or between the ages of 21 and 25 and in full-time education. I think you heard earlier that membership of the RSGB has reached its highest level for 11 years during 2021, which is fantastic. And we'd like to see that continue at all levels of membership. Of course, attracting young people as well as many other groups that we think would really enjoy discovering amateur radio, has been identified as critically important, both in the UK and internationally, during our work with other national societies through the IARU. We'll do all we can to continue to extend our successful publicity of amateur radio to attract new and retain existing members. We hope all radio amateurs will join us in that work by making amateur radio friendly and attractive to everyone, and by doing all they can to support the growth of amateur radio into the future. And I hand you back to the chair.
Thank you, Steve. The next question is submitted by George Atkinson, G8RPI. Why do the RSGB not make RADCOM and RADCOM Basics freely available to members as an unfettered PDF? Every other society and periodical I have been a member of or subscribed to in the last 10 years has allowed members and subscribers to download a PDF copy. In almost all cases, this includes access to a substantial number of back issues. This includes, for example, commercial magazines such as Elector. I'll ask Stuart to answer that question, please.
Thank you, George. This is one of a number of similar questions that the General Manager, Steve Thomas, and I will answer in two parts. RADCOM is available as a complete magazine in PDF format. It has a simple watermark at the top of the page with the member's name and call sign that does not intrude into the substantive text. RADCOM Basic articles are also available as a PDF with similar watermarks, and from the next edition, RADCOM Basics will be available as a complete magazine in PDF format. The matter of providing RADCOM and its archive in a more accessible format is work in progress. A gating item has been the obsolete electronic members database, which was judged not to be a suitable platform to underpin more sophisticated member electronic benefits. As anyone who has worked on these systems appreciates, migrating from one CRM to another is difficult. But after considerable work, the new platform is expected to go live in early May. One of the early member benefits projects that we will use the new CRM to deliver is a better system for providing electronic RADCOM. We anticipate that this will be available to members before the end of 2022. The matter of provision in PDF format is one that splits the industry because of the relative ease with which PDF can be pirated. We are concerned that piracy of RADCOM would have a direct impact on membership revenue, which in turn would have a direct impact on the level at which we needed to set member fees in order to pay for the many member services that we deliver, of which RADCOM is only one. The IRL is the organisation that best mirrors RSGB for these purposes. For content less than 10 years old, their approach is to use a multi-platform offline viewer of a type used by many commercial magazine publishers. They provide PDF format for material over 10 years old. This is the arrangement that I personally favour as a compromise between the short-term and the long-term needs of the Society and its members. We will work on the project to deliver the PDF archive when we have finished the project to make the last 10 years available electronically in its new format. Another questioner points out the advantage of timely delivery and the green advantage of electronic distribution. Until quite recently, we were prevented from simultaneously delivering paper and electronic format in the UK by the VAT rules. To have done so would have incurred VAT payment on RADCOM, regardless of whether it was delivered to members as paper or in electronic format. The government have since changed their position regarding VAT on digital publications, and we now provide RADCOM simultaneously in both paper and electronic format. This takes us to the matter of user delivery preference. It is possible to opt out of the paper version of RADCOM and instead access RADCOM through the existing electronic system. Opting out of RADCOM is currently a manual process and needs the member to contact RSGB headquarters. However, with our new CRM, we hope to automate this. For those that do not know, it is possible for members to look at the archived copies of RADCOMs on the RSGB website going back to before 2014. So the bottom line here is that this is very much active work in progress, and we hope that we will address this need soon. The General Manager, Steve Thomas, will address another group of questions related to PDF.
Yeah, Steve.
Okay, I'll read the question out as well. We've had a question submitted by Mike Waterfall, G8 NXD. And he says, as a senior citizen with limited sight, I find that accessing the online version of RSGB's publications is very difficult, especially the ludicrous software employed to view the PDFs. As far as I'm aware, the RSGB is the only society that does not make available downloadable PDFs of their journals. Will the board seriously consider altering their attitude to downloadable PDFs of the RADCOM issues for all versions? Well, first of all, thanks for your question, Mike. And also the other people who have asked similar or related questions, which Stuart's already answered. So many of those things have been covered. We do offer, incidentally, we do offer a membership for people who are blind in conjunction with the RAIBC, which provides an audio copy of RADCOM each month, and quite a few people don't actually realise that that's available. For other members, we, as Stuart's already said, we are looking for ways to provide a balance between digital rights management and useful ways to present our publications. So it is a balance, it really is. And Stuart talked about trying to find the correct balance when he spoke earlier. We already offer many of our books on the Kindle platform, and both RADCOM Plus and RADCOM Basics are available as PDF. The past editions of RADCOM are available on CD, and there was mention of the watermarking earlier. The watermarking includes, it's important to note that we use a function of Adobe Acrobat to produce that. We also include Adobe Acrobat on the CD. But if you use any other viewers, that can sometimes lead to a much more prominent watermark on the copy of RADCOM in the PDF. So please do try the included viewer. And just to come back to what Stuart said, really, as we advance our plans and projects starting with the CRM and onwards, and we advance those plans and projects into new media and delivery, we will try to find the correct balance of protecting the benefits of membership while making the content interesting and accessible. It is very much on our list. And I hand you back to the chair.
Thank you, Steve. Sorry for the hiccup last time. Thank you for reading the question. The next question comes from Austin Vaughan, M0MNE, and I read as follows. Why has the RSGB decided to exclude ordinary amateur radio enthusiasts from RSGB contests over the abhorrent actions of their national governments, even though they are not personally responsible for such actions? How does this decision benefit the amateur radio community as a whole, and how does this reconcile with the apolitical ethos of the hobby and the statement given by the IARU on the 28th of February 2022? And I'm going to ask Richard to answer.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Austin, for your question. Good afternoon, everyone. And I presume this question, although it doesn't specify, it relates to the activities or the actions of the Russian Federation in Ukraine, and that is the focus of my response. The board considered its position on this very carefully, and in the context of the significant sanctions that have been imposed on the Russian Federation following its aggressive invasion of Ukraine. Generally, amateur radio rightly stays neutral on these matters, but these circumstances, we think, are qualitatively different from other conflicts. Further, had a Russian station or group of stations actually won an RSGB contest, no member of the present board would have been comfortable awarding them the trophy. Some other national societies have taken comparable action, and the Russian Federation as a country has been excluded from CEPT. the Society has received support from representatives of amateur radio in Ukraine. The Society took account of the statement by the International Amateur Radio Union. The apolitical nature of amateur radio is something that we all value, but it is not an absolute, and doing nothing in this context would actually also be political. In some countries, and Russia is one example, amateur radio is not apolitical. It has strong links with the military establishment there. And we also understand that this exclusion from contests affects amateurs who are not directly involved in the actions of the Russian Federation. But that is true of all sanctions, which, although designed to put pressure on governments, will also affect the general population. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. The next question, submitted by April Jones, M7APR. What is the board and RSGB doing to make radio more inclusive to BME, LGBT and younger members? You only have to look at the number of boards to see this isn't reflected higher up. And I should take this question. At the request of a group of members, an exercise was conducted in 2020 to seek input from those in minority groups regarding any changes that the society should make in respect of diversity. The survey concluded that those members within those groups were comfortable and felt welcome. None reported feelings of discrimination. Earlier, Steve Thomas referred to the number of junior free memberships that the society supports. The society has an encompassing equality and diversity policy, which is intended to create and maintain an environment which recognises and respects everyone, especially those within the compass of the Equality Act 2010. Over time, we have been fortunate to welcome valuable contributions from members to every level of the society's membership, irrespective of their background, orientation, of age. Thank you. Our next question, submitted by Ernest Phillips, M7JSG. At some point in the future, with so many people moving to digital, would this mean we may lose quite a lot of analog channels on the higher frequencies? And I'll ask Stuart to respond to that question.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Ernest, for the question. So it's not quite clear what part of the spectrum or cause of loss that the questioner refers to. With all spectrum, the best way to protect it from reallocation to a non-amateur radio user service and to demonstrate its importance to the amateur radio band plan is to actively use it and to proactively encourage others to do likewise. While the RSGB can provide some support, the fundamental activity drive needs to come from those interested in that particular activity. Fundamental to amateur radio is self-learning and exploring new possibilities, and digital has a major role to play in that. FT8 has allowed radio operations when the bands were essentially closed. Digital voice has allowed us to experiment with more sophisticated methods of achieving national and international communications on VHF and UHF. In some cases, of which ATV is a really good example, the very innovative migration to digital has led to more usage, including in the lower frequency bands where it could not previously fit. I suspect that the questioner may be focusing on VHF FM, in which case I would refer him to my earlier answers, stressing the importance of using the bands and modes. However, I would also note that a full migration to digital seems unlikely for the foreseeable future, given that cheap analog 2-meter 70-centimeter transceivers are a common entry method that many foundation licensees use to get their first taste of experience on the air. For point-to-point operation, our history is that we always provide space in the band plans for narrowband legacy modes. If the question is concerned with repeater operation, I would note that many digital repeaters are multi-mode, including analog. Of course, there is no way to predict the future, but I imagine there will be at least a couple of decades of analog operation ahead of us. And I hand you back to the chair.
Thank you, Stuart. The next question comes from Martin Atherton, G3ZAY. Please would you explain what the plans are to select a UK team for the IARU Youngsters on the Air event in Croatia this August? And that goes to Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We have applied to the IARU YOTA team for a team of 4, which will consist of 3 team members and 1 team leader to attend the Croatia summer camp representing the UK. We've created an advert for publication in GB2RS and online comms channels, including an RSGB notices item, which we will publicise later this week. And an update to the RSGB Youth webpage will follow soon. Application forms have been prepared and are available for those who wish to apply to attend. Once the application forms are returned, they will be assessed for compliance with the criteria which are clearly described in the advert, and the successful applicants will be notified. I'll now hand back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think that explains it well. And our last question, ladies and gentlemen, is submitted by Steve Hartley, G0FUW, and reads as follows. In the February 2022 RAGCOM, we read about progress with the IARU's future strategy. However, we have read little about progress with the RSGB Strategy 2022. And it is disappointing to see that the RSGB Strategy webpage shows little evidence of any activity since 2018. Please could the board tell us what has been achieved against each of the strategic priorities since the strategy was launched? And that goes to the President, Stuart.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Steve, for the question. So I want to start by looking at the textbook definition of organisational strategy provided by Johnson and Scholes. Organisational strategy is the direction and scope of an organisation over the long term, ideally which matches its resources to its changing environment. Thus, strategy is a direction of travel rather than a project plan. I would argue that given the extreme and unforeseeable changes in our environment, we have ably adjusted our path to steer around difficulties, and we have exceeded expectations in many critical areas. In particular, the goal for 2022 was to have an active and thriving amateur radio community supported by a strong, representative and influential RSGB. The rate of exam passes is higher than in many years, and there is certainly more active and thriving amateur radio community than we've had for many years. That more of this activity is through electronic means and more geographically dispersed than was previously the case shows the importance of adapting to the ever-changing environment. The RSGB has more members than it has had in 11 years, and the RSGB is well respected and an influential national society within the amateur radio community. I think you will agree that we've gone a long way to addressing our goals for 2022. The list which the question points to is a list of priorities generated in 2017 that were thought at the time to be methods of achieving the 2022 goal. They are, however, necessarily subservient to the overall 2022 goal, and it is obvious that they would require constant tuning as circumstances changed and to match the changing environment. If we take a look at that priority list, we have certainly grown. We have maintained most of our spectrum, seen off a threat to the 2-meter band, and been loaned new spectrum with which to experiment. We do have issues with noise, but UK amateurs are building influence in heading off new sources of noise, and the problem with DSL noise will disappear as new types of local broadband infrastructure are deployed over the next few years. We have run many events to encourage participation in amateur radio, such as the Get on the Air to Care campaign. We have sponsored several research activities, such as the innovative approach to EMF and the Meteor monitoring system that we will hear about shortly. We encourage a range of diverse radio activities, such as construction and the use of new modes, both in regular communication and in contesting. Our membership has certainly increased. We support our volunteers and staff by providing the resources that they need and go out of our way to thank them and to publicise their achievements. We know that we need to do more on this, and we are open to suggestions.
As a flexible organisation, the RSGB was one of the first organisations to react to the pandemic. It had everyone working from home before the legal requirement and had reconfigured its processes to address the demand for online exams with remote invigilation and achieve a rate of new licenses that has exceeded anything that we have seen in the recent past. What the question seems to challenge is not what we have achieved, but our method of reporting it. And just with all elements of the strategy, this has to be tuned to the changing environment and the needs of the members. It is not clear what benefit would be achieved to the overwhelming majority of the membership by reporting this through updates to the strategy pages. Instead, we have chosen to focus on communicating the achievements of the amateur radio community and the RSGB through RADCOM, through many forms of video, through social media, through GB2RS, through the RSGB website as a whole, and through the various RSGB satellite websites that focus on the work of particular voluntary delivery teams. Where appropriate, these items are annotated with reference to the RSGB strategy. Now, the 2022 overall goal is a timeless goal and applies to 2027 as much as it did to 2022. To continue to achieve this goal, we need to ask for two things. Firstly, that if you need resources to deliver an innovative, practical idea that would benefit the UK amateur radio community as a whole, please will you bring it forward? And secondly, to bring these ideas to fruition, I need to ask you to work with us, to partner with the RSGB and engage with the amateur radio community to tune the idea, to align with consensus and put in the time, energy and perseverance needed to deliver that innovation to the amateur radio community. I hand you back to the chair.
Right, thank you. That brings us to the end of our answer session. We thank all those members for taking the time to submit the questions and hope you've answered them fully. There will be future reference to those questions and answers in RADCOM, and any of the questions which weren't possible to be answered today will be dealt with by the relevant director in due course. All that remains for me is to thank everybody for joining us today. So that concludes the AGM business. Stay with us now as Brian Coleman, G4NNS, will present the background and progress with the Meteor Beacon project. This is a collaborative project between the amateur radio and astronomy communities, supported by the RSGB Legacy Fund. While we set up the presentation, sit back and watch this 1-minute trailer of our practical skills video. They are an excellent resource that introduce you to some of the most common amateur radio skills. Goodbye, everybody.
Hello and welcome to this special live webinar about a meteor beacon for the UK. As we'll soon discover, meteors are of interest to both radio and astronomy enthusiasts, and the GB3 MBA Meteor Beacon is a collaborative project between radio and astronomy communities which is being supported by the RSGB Legacy Fund. It will enable a range of radio-based citizen science and STEM projects studying meteors and is about to go live in the next few weeks. With us now to tell us more is one of the people who've been leading the project, Brian Coleman, G4NNS. Hello Brian, can you give us a quick overview of what you'll be covering today?
Yes, I'm going to tell you about the Meteor Beacon project, show you how the study of meteors is of interest to both the radio and astronomy communities, and I believe has the potential to capture the imagination of future radio amateurs through the range of exciting space and radio related STEM projects it makes possible.
Sounds really exciting. And before Brian's presentation, a reminder that if you're watching this on Saturday the 23rd of April, then this is live and you can add comments and ask questions on YouTube chat at any time during the presentation or straight afterwards. Please include your first name and call sign if you have one within the message. Also, please note that you can make this video stream fill your screen on most devices, usually by double-clicking on the picture or pressing the full screen button. But now, let's go back to Brian and find out more about the GB3 MBA Meteor Beacon.
Right, well, very good afternoon to everybody. If you're watching live, meteors are of interest to the world of amateur radio, not just because of meteor scatter communications, but because meteoric material seeds the ionosphere with metal and other atoms that help create the ionosphere itself, which is so important for shortwave communications. Meteors are of interest to the astronomy community because they tell us about the structure and content of the solar system. GB3 MBA is a collaborative project between the amateur and astronomy communities, and it takes two phases. The first phase of the project is to establish the transmit beacon, and the second phase will be to design, build and deploy a network of web-based receivers to monitor the meteor activity. While some meteors arrive in regular showers caused by the Earth's passage through the trails of comets orbiting the Sun, others appear to be more or less random. GB3 MBA will illuminate a region where meteors entering the Earth's atmosphere burn up. This region will have a diameter of about 400 kilometers, centered on the Sherwood Observatory of the Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society, who have kindly agreed to host the beacon. Observers can expect to see meteors arriving at a rate of about 2 a minute, even outside the recognized showers, and this provides opportunities to take part in some interesting citizen science. An important driver of this project is the fact that young people, potential radio amateurs, are attracted to matters involving space. I have found that especially young visitors to my Radio Shack are fascinated to see echoes from meteors as they arrive at planet Earth, and had no idea that we could detect these using radio. Meteor beacons are not new. BRAMS and VVS beacons in Belgium have been in existence for many years and provide useful coverage of meteor events above Belgium. But there is no similar coverage at the moment for the UK. GB3 MBA is going to fill that gap. And as I keep reminding everyone, this is a collaborative project between the amateur radio and radio astronomy communities. And it's being supported by the RSGB Legacy Fund and by the Radio Astronomy Group of the British Astronomical Association, and UCRA, that's the UK Radio Astronomy Association. And it will facilitate all kinds of interesting STEM projects and citizen science projects that will attract people into the world of amateur radio. So this is a very simple diagram of what is proposed. The black line here is intended to indicate the curvature of planet Earth. A transmit beacon which will be located near Mansfield at the Sherwood Observatory beaming upwards, vertically upwards, with quite a wide beam width, so that at 100 kilometers, where the meteors are burning up and creating ionized trails, we will be illuminating a region with a diameter of around about 400 kilometers. So it will provide pretty good coverage over the UK. At this altitude, the echoes are detectable out to a range of something like 1,200 kilometers from the beacon itself. So the receivers will be scattered pretty widely. GB3 MBA will transmit on 50.408, and that the 50 megahertz band has been chosen because it's particularly good for getting echoes of meteor trails. It's also an exclusive amateur band, which helps with the licensing of the beacon. It will be beaming vertically up using circular polarization with around about 80 to 100 watts. This power level means that the echoes will be heard even by quite simple receiving equipment, such as a FunCube dongle and a dipole. Phase 1 of the project is to establish the transmit beacon. It's been tested from my home location, and we hope to get it on the air from Sherwood Observatory from the weekend of about the 14th and 15th of May. Now, you should have your fingers poised near your volume control, because with any luck, the next slide is going to include a loud sound, which is some white noise and a couple of meteor pings just to show what they sound like. Most examples of meteors that I will show you in this talk are from the Brahms meteor beacon in Belgium, which transmits on 49.970 megahertz, and it's about 425 kilometers from my location here. And the observations are made using a waterfall display and an SDR receiver. In fact, I think all of the ones I shall show you pretty well have been made using a FunCube dongle, SDR console as the software, and a 3-element beam pointing towards Belgium. For those wanting to receive the beacon, our beacon here in the UK, a dipole antenna will be sufficient for anybody within about 400 kilometers of the beacon. So here's an example of the type of spectrum display you can expect when you're looking for meteors. The upper part of the display, the spectrum display, displays frequency. For those of you not familiar with these displays, it's frequency across the dial here, and amplitude vertically there. And this is a pretty loud meteor. The lower part of the display is the waterfall display. It's got time running in this direction and frequency again. So it shows a spectrally spread echo there, but with not much Doppler shift on it because it's right on the frequency we're tuned to. But you may notice a very thin line here, which we call the head echo. And that's the echo off the trail that's following the meteor as it is traveling into the atmosphere and burning up. It's a small ionized trail, of which much more as I progress through the talk. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the same thing. Here is the head echo. It's characterized by very rapidly changing Doppler shift as the meteor slows down and its direction relative to the observer changes as it sort of goes across the horizon or what have you. And then this is known as the tail echo or trail echo, which is basically a region that has become ionized as the meteor passes through it, and that will have very little Doppler shift on it, and will last for some time. And this is the thing that we use for meteor scatter communications. The head echo wouldn't be much help because it's very, very short and with rapidly changing Doppler shift. Now, the head echo is caused by this, if you like, thin trail of electrons following the meteor, and in radio terms, it looks like a wire antenna. And such antennas exhibit polarization, and they can have patterns of lobes like the ones on this diagram here. So the head echoes are directional, and they're polarized. The beacon transmits circular polarization to overcome the polarization effect, although it is still affected, but will still affect reception, as will the nulls between lobes. If the meteor is being observed by receiver A, he could be in a null. Receiver B could be in a peak. And if the meteor was traveling directly towards the transmitter, it's like having a wire antenna pointing directly at the transmitter. That will put the transmitter in a deep null, so it's unlikely to pick up much energy, and nobody's likely to see much of an echo. This effect was first observed by Sir Bernard Lovell using World War II surplus radar in 1946. Similarly, if the meteor is coming straight towards the observer, they will be in a deep null and are unlikely to see the echo. So head echoes can be directional. They can be directional, we won't always see them, but if we were to deploy a number of receivers at different locations, some will see the head echo. An ambition of this project is to locate meteor events by triangulation and to calculate their trajectory. Astronomers will be interested in the radiant, that's the apparent origin of the meteor, so while head echoes are of little interest for radio communications, they will be key to establishing the trajectory, the radiant and location of the meteor, and perhaps for larger meteorites might even give us some clues as to the location of an impact area. Sometimes we only see the tail echo because the head echo was nulled out or was lost through polarization. But we can measure the instantaneous amplitude that we see on the upper display here, and we can do things like make meteor counts using the tail echo. But it's the head echo that we're going to concentrate on in order to pursue the ambition of calculating the location and trajectory of meteors. Phase 2 of the project is to receive the IQ data from software-defined radios and stream it over the net along with precision timing so that it can be recorded for later analysis. By later, that could be quite soon, almost in real time, give or take the latency of the receivers and the internet. At this point, it's possible to get very confused by the terms that astronomers in particular use about head echoes and tail echoes, because the head echo, I like to think of that as coming from the tail, the ionized tail immediately following the meteor as it's burning up, whereas the astronomy view of the tail echo is actually a region in the ionosphere that has become ionized enough to reflect radio due to the passage of the meteor through it. Sometimes we see the head echo, but very little or no tail echo. The head echo, I hope this comes across, it starts here on my display and extends past the point where a very short tail echo has been formed and continues beyond it as the meteor decelerates and either completely burns up or has slowed down to the point where it's no longer creating ionization. And it's the wire antenna, if you think of that as a wire antenna following the meteor down. confusing, isn't it, the name head echo and tail echo. In contrast to the head echo, the tail or trail echo can be long-lasting. It exhibits little Doppler shift, so is useful for extending radio communication range by meteor scatter, and it reflects more or less isotropically, so it's not so directional. But it's of very little use for calculating location of the event unless you have a pulsed radar system, and we're not allowed to have a pulsed radar system, so it's of very little use to us. For calculating speed and trajectory, we need to concentrate on the head echo. This is a simplified two-dimensional illustration indicating how the problem of calculating speed, location, and trajectory might be solved. The Doppler shift measured by an observer is a function of the meteor's velocity in the direction of the observer and its velocity in the direction of the transmitter. To calculate the trajectory, etc., it will be necessary to have observations from a number of different locations. And there are papers indicating how this calculation might be done. And it may involve an iterative process. We'll certainly be looking for clever mathematicians to help us with this project. So with GB3 MBA transmitting a CW carrier and with multiple receivers, we are in effect creating a bistatic radar system. Using software-defined radios with precision timing and streaming IQ data, and we're going to planning to stream audio as well, for a number of different locations, it will be possible to measure Doppler shift at a given instant and hence calculate the velocity, trajectory and location of the meteor at that instant. Here are some examples of various meteor echoes I recorded, just showing that they do in fact come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. For those observing the beacon within 400 kilometers or so, they're going to see echoes from aircraft. Whilst it's possible to remove these by software, a good way of eliminating them is to have receivers that are more than 400 kilometers from the beacon. This is a screenshot from Chris G0MQW, who's near Reading, made while I was testing the beacon from my home location in northwest Hampshire, distance of about 30-40 kilometres, something of that sort. And as you see, there are plenty of aircraft echoes there, as Chris is pretty well on the flight path that goes into and above Heathrow Airport. So phase 2, an important part of phase 2, is to deploy some of the web receivers at radio quiet locations more than 400 kilometers from the beacon, and that will mean that we won't have to bother too much about aircraft echoes, and it will also help with triangulation of meteor events. So now I'll talk a little bit about the beacon itself, and here's a block diagram, hopefully gives you some idea of the major parts of it. It's all really fairly basic stuff. The transmitter has been built by Andy, G4JNT. The frequency reference is a standard Leo Bodnar GPS locked reference. Passes through a low pass filter, a power amplifier, and then into a hybrid to generate the 90-degree phase shift for the antenna system. It's two Moxon antennas. I'll show you the pictures in a minute. At right angles, and by feeding them one 90 degrees lagging behind the other, you can create circular polarization, and if you get it the right way round, it'll be right-hand circular polarization. And the characteristic of a hybrid, and this one was designed and built by Chris, G3WIE, is that it's a 4-port. This is a 4-port hybrid, and if there's any imbalance between the two antennas, the power is directed to the 4th port, which helps protect the transmitter, and also provides us, by putting a detector on the 4th port, it gives us a means of checking that the antenna is working correctly, and that's monitored in the beacon. The control and monitoring is from a Raspberry Pi, and the software for that has been written by Heather M0HMO. It's been on test now for a few days. In fact, since the bank holiday weekend, it's been running on and off in the shack here, either into a dummy load or occasionally into an antenna. The Raspberry Pi monitors the forward power, the dump power, the power amplifier temperature, and the state of various other parts of the system. And it provides a web page which will be accessible by the beacon keeper and the close down operators, and will also be available on the beacon website being created by the Radio Astronomy Group. I think that's probably all you need to see. Here is the power amplifier built by Andy. Of course, it's running 100 watts or nearly 100 watts continuously. Obviously, cooling and so on is an important factor. The Raspberry Pi will be monitoring the temperature, and if it overheats, it will close things down and restart if it's once it's cooled down sufficiently. We hope that in its location it will be able to run continuously with the fan, keeping it reasonably cool, but that's to be discovered. The actual location it's going into may be subject to being heated up by the sun, and I have experience with beacons that are in places that are very exposed to the sun with them getting too hot. So we hope that won't happen here. Okay, a bit more on the antenna. This was the prototype antenna, a wire version made with plastic water pipe, and as per the instructions on the net as to how to make a Moxon beam, I simply put 2 at right angles, put them on test. They tuned up extremely well. At this point, they were being fed with a coax hybrid, but the lump constant hybrid that Chris made has proved much more satisfactory. While it was on test, a passing hare decided to inspect it, which you see there, Harry the hare. That design was then developed into a more rugged piece of equipment, which is what will actually be deployed at the Sherwood beacon, and this has been assembled just in the last few days for testing of the beacon, which is now underway. So here is a shot of the beacon under test at the present time. I'm just talking you through it. Obviously the cooling fan is there. All the controls and bits and pieces are on the front panel. There's nothing really comes out of the back. That's because where it's going to be located, the back won't be terribly accessible. A requirement for beacons, as I think most people will be aware, is that if Ofcom require it to be closed down, it must be closed down promptly, and that can be done either locally by throwing a switch or by accessing it over the internet and telling it to close down. And it can't be reinstated over the internet. It will have to be manually powered back up by pressing the reset button. The local close down switch it simply shuts off the transmitter if it's necessary to work on the antennas or anything of that sort. The indicators are all fairly obvious. Tells you that GPS is locked. If it loses GPS lock, it will go off the air, and this will be reported on the web page. This is the panel where the with the hybrid behind it, with the two outputs, the split outputs, roughly 50 watts into each, and with 90-degree phase shift. And here's the GPS antenna. So that's the transmitter. This is very current. It's really only gone on to serious test after its initial proof of concept testing some months ago. Serious testing is just getting underway now. And this is what the web page looks like when you access the Raspberry Pi. There's a bit of fettling to do yet and some calibration. Don't pay too much attention to the numbers here. In fact, the output power, forward power, is about 80 watts at the moment with the way things are set up. So we need to recalibrate that a little bit. And this software has been written by Heather Lohman, M0HMO. So phase 2, to establish a receiver network. Individual observers will be able to build their own receivers, of course, and use the beacon and the echoes from the meteors that it produces as they see fit. But in addition to that, it's the ambition to install a number of receivers in radio quiet locations, and that these receivers will include precision timing, so that they can stream their data along with precision timing over the network, correcting for the latency through the receivers themselves and, of course, over the internet. This is what will make triangulation possible. Going back to this simple diagram, excuse me, the beacon illuminates this region at about 100 kilometers with about 400 kilometers diameter. The receivers can in principle be located anywhere within around about 1200 kilometers, and we will be particularly looking for radio quiet locations of the order of 400 kilometers from the beacon, because these are where the aircraft reflections will not be visible. There will, of course, be work done on the software to remove aircraft echoes. It's not too difficult, but it's quite nice to have the receivers as far away as is practical to avoid seeing the aircraft echoes. This is representing the height at which aircraft fly, up to 10 kilometers, and here is the region where the ionization trails occur at about 100 kilometers. The idea is that where these receivers are in the network, they will stream their data to a central system that's under consideration and design now, where the IQ data and timing information will be consolidated and perhaps analyzed to an extent. In the early part of the project, it may be that users can access the individual receivers, but there will be limits on the number of people who can access an individual receiver. So for that reason, as the project develops, the receivers will be streaming to a central system, which will allow multiple users to access it and collect the data and analyze it in any way they see fit. We have run a proof of concept test for the web-based receivers, and here you see the kind of setup we were using. It consists of a Raspberry Pi, it's a web server, if you like, an SDR Play as SDR receiver, and we were using a little bit of a preamplifier in front of that at the time. That was connected to the usual kind of antenna. In this case, it was the 3-element beam pointing at Brams, and streaming its data over the net using a standard piece of software, which is the proof of concept was developed by Mark G6AHY, who will lead the receiver part, phase 2, if you like, of the beacon project. Conventional web SDR systems tend to go for maximum bandwidth. We don't need a lot of bandwidth for this. Something of the order of 20 kilohertz should be plenty, but we would like to have the best possible frequency resolution, because we're going to be wanting to make accurate measurements of Doppler shift. And we also need precision timing and precision frequency control, of course. So each system will have its own GPS receiver to lock the frequency and provide precision timing. To make positional calculations of the kind of accuracy we would like to have, I had thought that we would need quite onerous timing specification, but it looks as if, because we are dealing with the velocity of the meteorite, not the velocity of light, speed of light. Obviously the meteorite is quite a few orders of magnitude slower than the speed of light, and the demands on the timing are correspondingly less onerous, and it looks like sort of millisecond or perhaps 100 microsecond timing might well be accurate enough to give really good positional information on the meteors, but it's early days yet. Here is an example of the web SDR output as received from elsewhere, using OpenWebRX, which is not terribly suitable for this project. The frequency resolution is nowhere near good enough. But this is a genuine meteor burst. It's on more or less 49.97. That's Brams in Belgium, as received in Hampshire here. And the same event also produced a burst from VVS beacon, also in Belgium, which is on 49.90. The rest of all the clutter on here, I'm afraid, is interference. And these are all things that we've got to address. There are a number of things that we will have to address. One is searching for suitable radio quiet sites, because 6 meters, whilst it's great for getting pings off meteors, in urban areas especially, it can have a very high noise floor, and we're looking for the quietest possible locations. We've already got some ideas on how we might find those, and the cooperation with, particularly with the astronomy world, could help us find some quiet sites at observatories. Astronomy societies often have observing sites in dark places. Not all of them will have power and the internet, but some will, and we hope we'll be persuading some of them to host these receivers. It's not onerous, it'll just be a relatively modest antenna and a Raspberry Pi and a few other bits and pieces. It won't use a huge amount of electricity. So we'll be very much looking for host sites for the receiver. So what next? Well, the plan at the moment is to install the beacon up at the Sherwood Observatory on the 14th and 15th of May, then start work on the receiver network. And in parallel with all that, develop STEM-based projects to encourage interest in radio and in astronomy, of course. There's huge potential for this. And I've always found that visitors to my shack who see the meteor pings from graphs and from VVS and and BRAMS are amazed. Young people are amazed. They're all interested in space, and the fact that radio can show us the Meteor activities, they find it fascinating. So I'm convinced this is going to attract lots of interest from young folk in the world of radio and astronomy. The beacon will also facilitate some quite serious citizen science and indeed research projects. So we need to develop relationships with schools and universities. And work is going on with the radio astronomy group to develop a citizen science program. There's some information on that is available from their website, which I'll leave at the end of this presentation. There's links. So, GB3MBA, the host is the Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society, Sherwood Observatory. The beacon keeper is Peter Day. He's kindly volunteered for the purposes of getting the license. We have closed down operators online. Nigel Cunnington and Paul Sherratt are both members of the Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society. And John Lee, who's very local to the location of the beacon, has kindly agreed to be one of the closed down operators and support the project technically, which is great. Great to have somebody local. I'd like to thank the many members of the radio and astronomy communities who've helped to make the project possible. Andy Talbot, who designed the transmitter, Chris Bryant, the hybrid and design and build. He's also given me a certain amount of help with the antenna. Heather Lomond, of course, with the web monitor and control software. Mark Frieder, G68AHY, has helped me with networking matters, which are completely alien to me. Peter Zollman, of course, regarding the EMR modelling necessary for the site. John Berman, who's a member of the radio astronomy group of BAA, who's written the website for the page. It's still sort of being developed, but he's in charge. Peter is the beacon keeper. Mansfield and Sutton Astronomical Society, of course. Nigel Cunnington, who in particular is helping with the installation. Paul Sherratt at Sherwood, who will help with the IT matters, getting the thing connected to the net. And of course the Radio Society of Great Britain for licensing advice from Murray and support from the Legacy Fund. So lots of people to thank. And finally, there are some links. The Beacon homepage is here. This is being run by John Berman and is effectively being run by the Radio Astronomy Group of the BAA. The UK Radio Astronomy Association plan to provide kits once we've got the receiver design firmed up. They will look into providing kits and other materials. This is something they do for other radio astronomy projects, and they will be planning to support this project with similar kits and so forth. They have, for example, suitable Moxon antennas already available. British Astronomical Association, who've supported us, given us lots of moral support. And something else I would recommend is Jim Bacon's talk on sporadic E to the UK 6 meter group, where he talks a little bit about meteors and the way that the material that they put into the ionosphere gets mixed up and plays a major role in other forms of propagation. So that's about it. Thank you very much for your attention, and if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to see if I can answer them.
Thank you very
much. Over to you, David.
Brian. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, so if you've got a question or maybe an observation or maybe like to share some experiences you've had with Meteor Scatter Communications, then this is a good time to ask it. On the YouTube chat, you can enter it right now, and if you do it immediately, we'll be sure to read that to Brian and hopefully he'll be able to answer it for you. Brian, I'm going to start, if I might, just by asking you how you got first involved with Meteor Scatter Communications yourself.
Well, really, I got involved through an interest in radio astronomy. My real line in radio astronomy is actually hydrogen line stuff. But I ran a number of events for British Science and Engineering Week and had visitors from people of all ages. And when they came, we did things like measuring the distance to the moon by bouncing signals off it and that kind of thing. But I always had running in the background the Graves radar, which is really designed for looking for space junk. It's on 143.050, so just below the 2 meter band, located at Toulouse, beaming south. But if you beam towards it, you get echoes of all sorts of things, satellites, space station, and meteors. And people, young people particularly, were absolutely fascinated to see that radio allows you to detect such things. And that's really where it all started for me.
Yes, and as you say, I mean, we all of us as radio amateurs, we should be encouraging young people to see how amateur radio can be relevant to them, and not necessarily on the obvious things like talking to people or using Morse code or data. But of course, this is just another aspect of amateur radio, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes.
So you've mentioned that several people have already been involved with the project. You also mentioned in your presentation that you were looking for other people. I think you actually said clever mathematicians is one of the groups of people you're looking for. Is that to help with the software and what you're going to be doing with this data now you've actually built the hardware?
Yes, there's quite a lot of expertise out there, and we're sort of vaguely, well, more than vaguely, tapped into it through the BAA RAG group. You know, I know from previous work with hydrogen line stuff, there's some very clever people out there who are looking for interesting opportunities to get involved with astronomy and such things, and amateur radio, different projects. The particular expertise we are going to be looking for, we have some ideas where it might come from, include software-defined radio design, because we need to adapt standard products with our own software to do exactly what we want. So we're looking for expertise in that area. And regarding the triangulation and plotting, that will require some quite interesting mathematics. I'm not proposing to do it, attempt to do it myself. I'm not nearly clever enough. Luckily, there are some papers that guide how this might be done. So we're not starting from zero, but there's probably some very bright mathematicians out there who'd love to have a go at it, and I'd be very pleased to hear from them. There are a few other, aspects of the project, like integrating the precision timing into the IQ data that we're going to be streaming over the internet. Also, the construction of the web. The sort of consolidating area, if you like, the server through which all the data will be recorded and maybe analysed as well. That's not my field at all. That's being dealt with at the moment through John Berman is really the sort of head honcho for that. And anybody with good ideas, we're very willing to listen to them.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're doing this live on a Saturday afternoon, but of course we're going to be recording this now, and we're going to put it up as a standalone piece. So although you won't be able to chat afterwards, you'll be able to get the contact details as well, which we'll also put on the RSGB website. So you'll be able to contact Brian and his team if you've already got these skills, or maybe you know someone who has. Don't be afraid to share this video then. How unusual is this project? I mean, I know you said that there have already been beacons in places like Belgium, I think you said. But I mean, is this got a lot of international interest because of this?
There are projects elsewhere. I can't claim to be terribly well read into them, but there are other projects, and really the main driver here is to get to the point where perhaps we can create an almost live map of Meteor events over the UK. I don't know of any such system doing that elsewhere, but there's a lot of interest, and people are observing meteors by all sorts of other methods. And of course, there's the Fireball Alliance, who who observe meteors optically, who have done a great job. And at some point, we will be wanting to share our ideas with them and learn from them. We're just coming up to the point where we will have something to show them and talk about, and I look forward to that because, of course, with radio we will be able to observe meteors at any time of the day or night and whatever the weather conditions. So, you know, it should tie in very nicely with the work that the optical guys are doing through the Fireball Alliance, for example.
Yes, thanks. And how many stations are you hoping to set up? You hope that you're going to attract some of the maybe astronomy associations as well, but how many across Britain are you hoping to set up?
Well, the project itself aims to get about somewhere around 3, maybe 5 receivers out there. But it's clear that quite a few of the people from the radio astronomy community are keen to have their own receivers, and some of those will be integrated into the network. So, you know, I would think to make it really work, we need well-distributed receivers, and we probably need to get a reasonably good hit rate where they can all see the head echo. We probably need maybe somewhere in the 5 to 10 region, I would think. And I'm sure we'll have no trouble getting plenty of receivers out there because it's such fun to see what's going on. The main problem is going to be finding radio quiet locations for them, I think.
Well, I think that sounds like something that radio amateurs at least are all yearn for, so we should know where to start. We've had Stuart, G3YSX, ask a question. Is this a CW beacon or does it include a form of other modulation?
It's CW. To make a bistatic radar of this system, we're not allowed to pulse it, and because we want to measure precise Doppler shifts, it's best not to FSK it. So it's in fact currently A1A keying. So it's a CW. It will have a relatively long time between idents. We'll stretch it to within reasonable limits of the maximum we're allowed. It'll probably identify every 10 minutes and quite high speed, because we don't really want to interrupt the plain unmodulated carrier that we're using to make Doppler measurements with.
Excellent. Well, I think this has been a great use of the legacy fund which the RSGB have provided, and if you want to know more details about that legacy fund, if you've got an idea for a project that they might adopt, the details are on the bottom of your screen now, rsgb.org/legacy. But Brian, this has been a fascinating journey of how we can combine amateur radio and space and lots of other interests, astronomy as well, all at the same time. We thank you very much for joining us today, and as I said before, we'll be putting up your contact details of your group so that other people who can help and get involved will be in touch. But once again, thank you very much to Brian.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you. And that concludes this special webinar, and thanks once again to our presenter Brian Coleman, G4NNS. The RSGB produces other online webinars such as the monthly Tonight at 8 series, and to find out more or to send any comments or feedback for us, please visit rsgb.org/webinars. And remember, if you subscribe to the RSGB's YouTube channel, you'll automatically be notified of all upcoming webinars, as well as other new videos and presentations from the Society on a wide range of amateur radio topics. We hope you've enjoyed today's presentation and look forward to seeing you again soon. But for now, this is David G7URP signing off and clear. Bye-bye.